Muammar Gaddafi toppled a king to seize power. He outmaneuvered his opponents for 40 years, and in one of his final TV appearances, he pretended to play chess with a Russian envoy. Many thought he was deluded, eccentric, but he was cunning enough to hold on to power long after many dictators had been overthrown. He went from international pariah to Western ally. But the new relationship didn't last, and British bombs helped drive him out of power. Colonel Gaddafi called himself brother leader after coming to power in 1969 in a military coup. He was just 27 when he deposed King Idris. He went on to invent a new political philosophy, Jamahiriya, a strange mix of socialism, nationalism, Islam, and his own ideas. In reality, he was just another brutal dictator. He quashed dissent at home and abroad. In 1984, his agents fired at a demonstration outside the Libyan embassy in London. WPC Yvonne Fletcher was killed. It was one incident among the many which led President Reagan to dub him the Mad Dog. The colonel sponsored terrorism around the world, arming, among others, the IRA, the PLO, and Peru's Shining Path movement. In 1986, the US bombed Gaddafi's Tripoli compound in revenge for Libya's role in the attack on a Berlin nightclub which had killed 2 American servicemen. 2 years later, 270 people were killed when a Pan Am passenger jet blew up over Lockerbie. 2 Libyan agents were charged, and on the eve of the trial in Scotland, Sky's James Matthews posed the question which has still not been answered.
Were the 2 men, as has been reported, acting under direct orders from you?
Despite never admitting Libya's guilt, the regime took responsibility and paid compensation in order to get years of sanctions lifted. Things changed. Tony Blair came to visit. Gaddafi gave up his weapons of mass destruction.
I mean, this is something that is good in terms of acting against terrorism, good for our 2 countries in terms of defence, and also good for business too.
The man jailed for the Lockerbie bombing, Abdelbaset al-Megrahi, was released by the Scottish government on compassionate grounds. Gordon Brown denied a deal had been done with the colonel, but the decision angered the White House. When protests over his rule broke out, the colonel's reaction was instinctive. Ruthless acts of suppression, and then, as the rebellion grew, absolute defiance. He called those opposing him rats and vowed to hunt them down, street by street, house by house, and zenga zenga, alleyway to alleyway. With Benghazi about to be overrun, a UN resolution paved the way for international military intervention. When NATO started bombing, he could never win. The rats he vowed to pursue began to close in on him. It took 6 months, and while NATO bombed, foreign forces trained the rebels. Eventually, they made a triumphant entry into the capital, Tripoli.
People here celebrating, shooting their guns up into the air, which is on account of the noise, and they just want to celebrate. They're tearing down green flags, they're shooting at Colonel Gaddafi posters. That's the sign that they all make when they talk about Colonel Gaddafi right now. But there is really a feeling of victory, really, celebration and victory.
The 69-year-old ex-dictator was reduced to ranting audio messages in which he insisted he would prevail. The next time a British Prime Minister visited Libya, it was to celebrate his part in Gaddafi's downfall. David Cameron and French President Nicolas Sarkozy were greeted as heroes. Pictures and the statues were hauled down throughout the country, but for 6 weeks the man himself proved elusive. Now the people who once lived in terror of his regime have their final retribution. Ian Woods, Sky News.